Today is Monday, March the 2nd, 2026, and as U.S. markets are preparing to open this morning, the world woke up to something that hasn't happened in decades. The United States and Israel launched direct military strikes against Iran overnight, and in the hours since, the financial world has been flipped completely upside down. Oil is up nearly 10%, stock futures are down almost 2%, and right now, as you're watching this, there are investors, fund managers, and everyday people around the world staring at their screens asking the same question. What do I do? Here's the thing. Nobody on mainstream financial media is telling you right now. While most investors are panicking, while the S&P 500 futures are bleeding, while European markets are collapsing, while oil companies are popping and defense stocks are flying, there is one asset sitting quietly in the background that has always done what it was designed to do in moments exactly like this one. And if you're watching this channel, you already know what I'm talking about. Welcome back to Silver Signals. I'm your host, Yali Jiang. And if you're new here, first of all, welcome. You found us at exactly the right moment. This channel is dedicated to helping you understand precious metals, global markets, and how to position your wealth for what's coming, not just what's happening right now. Hit that subscribe button and ring the bell, because on days like today, the information we cover here is the kind that could genuinely protect your financial future. For those of you who've been with us for a while, you already know we've been talking about geopolitical risk for months, and today, that risk just became very, very real. So here's what we're going to break down together in this video. We're going to look at exactly what happened overnight and what it means for global markets. Then we're going to dig into what oil doing, what it's doing right now actually signals, because it's not just about energy prices. Then we're going to talk about silver and gold and why precious metals in a moment like this aren't just a nice to have. They might be the most important thing in your portfolio. And finally, I want to give you the insight that most people won't reach because they'll turn the video off too early. It's the one perspective shift that could change how you think about wealth protection forever. Stay with me. Let's go. So let's start with what actually happened. US and Israeli forces launched coordinated military strikes against Iran overnight. And now I'm not going to get into the geopolitics of who's right and who's wrong. That's not what this channel is about. What I am going to do is tell you what the markets are saying right now, this morning. Because the market is often the most honest commentator in the room. S&P 500 futures dropped 1.7%. Dow Jones futures, same story, down 1.7%. And Brent Crude, the international oil benchmark, jumped nearly 10% to just under $80 a barrel. U.S. crude, WTI, surged 9% to $73. And if you're watching European markets right now, Germany's DAX has dropped 2.2%. France's CAC 40 is down 1.9%. And even the UK's FTSE 100, which is usually more resilient, slipped a full percent. Now here's what I want you to understand about these numbers. These aren't just numbers. These are the collective pulse of millions of investors all over the world making simultaneous decisions in real time based on fear, uncertainty, and the very human instinct that says, get out of the way of the train. When you see futures down nearly 2% before the opening bell in the United States, that is not a dip, that is a signal. That is the market screaming at you that something has fundamentally shifted in the risk calculus of the world. And when oil moves 10% in a single night, that doesn't happen on a quiet Monday. That happens when traders believe something has changed that cannot easily be reversed. And that is exactly what we are watching play out right now in real time. Iran sits at one of the most strategically critical choke points in the global oil supply chain, the Strait of Hormuz. Roughly 20% of all globally traded oil flows through that narrow stretch of water, and that's not a marginal number. That's a fifth of the world's oil supply potentially at risk, depending on how this conflict escalates. And right now, nobody knows how far it goes. Not the analysts on television, not the hedge funds, not the central banks. And that uncertainty, that complete fog of what comes next is exactly the environment in which precious metals have historically done some of their most important work. It is the environment that separates prepared investors from panicking ones. And it is the environment we are living in right now, this morning, as markets open. Let me talk about oil for a moment, because I think most people are watching this oil spike and thinking about it in one dimension. Gas prices, energy costs, inflation. And yes, all of that matters. But the real signal buried inside a sudden violent oil price jump like this one is something deeper. It's a signal about the fragility of the global system that we've all been pretending is more stable than it is. Think about it this way. The global economy, every product you buy, every piece of food you eat, every package delivered to your door runs on oil. It's not just fuel, it's the lubricant of global trade itself. And when oil spikes 10% overnight because of a military strike, it doesn't just raise your gas prices. It raises the cost of manufacturing, it raises shipping costs, it raises food costs, and it puts enormous pressure on central banks that are already walking a very thin line between fighting inflation and supporting economic growth. The Federal Reserve, the European Central Bank, the Bank of England, They're all suddenly in a much harder position this morning than they were yesterday. And here's what that means for stocks. When oil is expensive and inflation reignites and central banks are forced to keep rates higher for longer, that is one of the worst environments for equities. Corporate profit margins get squeezed, consumer spending slows, and suddenly those sky-high valuations that got priced into the S&P 500 over the last couple of years start looking very, very vulnerable. The futures telling you down 1.7% this morning? That might just be the beginning of a repricing process if this conflict doesn't resolve quickly. This is not the moment to be complacent about your portfolio. This is the moment to understand exactly what you own and why you own it. Now, I genuinely want to know what you think about this. Drop a comment below right now. Are you feeling nervous about your portfolio today? Are you already holding precious metals as protection, or are you someone who's been watching this channel and thinking about making a move but hasn't pulled the trigger yet? I read every single comment on this channel, and I want to hear from you wherever you are in the world. This community is global. We've got viewers from Southeast Asia, from Europe, from Latin America, from the Middle East, and your perspective on what's happening right now is genuinely valuable. So please let me know below, because I think your voice matters, and this conversation is one that the whole community benefits from. Now, let's talk about what this means for silver and gold, because this is where I think things get really interesting, and really important for you specifically. Gold this morning is moving. It always moves in moments like this, and there's a reason it has been called a safe haven for literally thousands of years. When the world becomes uncertain, when paper assets feel risky, when geopolitical tension spikes, gold goes up. It happened during the Gulf War. It happened after September 11th. It happened during the 2008 financial crisis. It happened during COVID, and it is happening right now. Gold is the world's oldest and most trusted form of crisis insurance, and when military strikes happen overnight, institutional investors, the big ones, the ones managing hundreds of billions of dollars, they don't call their broker and say buy more tech stocks. They buy gold. They buy it as a hedge. They buy it as a store of value. They buy it because when everything else is uncertain, gold has a 5,000-year track record of being certain. But here's where silver comes in. And this is the part of the conversation that I think is criminally underreported. Silver is not just a safe haven metal. Silver is also an industrial metal, and it is used in solar panels, in electric vehicles, in electronics, in medical equipment. The green energy transition that is still underway globally, despite all the geopolitical noise, that transition runs on silver. And right now, we have a situation where silver is benefiting on both fronts simultaneously. On one hand, the safe haven demand is rising because of the conflict, and on the other hand, the structural industrial demand for silver, the long-term secular trend, has not changed at all. The conflict didn't make solar panels less necessary. It didn't make EVs less relevant. It didn't make the global push for clean energy disappear. What that means is that silver right now is sitting at the intersection of two massive tailwinds. Geopolitical fear is driving safe haven demand. Industrial demand from the energy transition is still growing, and the supply side of silver has been constrained for years. Silver mining has not kept pace with demand, and the above-ground stockpiles are tighter than most people realize. When you combine tight supply, growing industrial demand, and a sudden spike in safe haven demand all at the same time, that is a setup that precious metals investors recognize. That is not a normal setup. That is a compressed spring. And compressed springs, when they release fast and with force. I want to give you a real-world comparison here so this clicks. Think about what happened to oil prices in 1973 during the Arab oil embargo. Before the embargo, oil was about $3 a barrel. And by the start of 1974, it had quadrupled almost overnight, because suddenly people realized that the supply of something essential to modern life was not as secure as they thought. The market repriced that risk violently and fast. Now imagine that same kind of sudden repricing happening to a commodity like silver, which is essential to modern green energy infrastructure, which is already undersupplied relative to demand, and which now has geopolitical fear adding fuel to the fire. That repricing can happen faster than most investors are prepared for, and the people who are already positioned, the people who own physical silver, who hold silver ETFs, who have allocated a meaningful portion of their portfolio to precious metals, those are the people who don't have to panic on a morning like this one. They can sit back and watch. They are not scrambling to make decisions under pressure. They made the decision before the pressure arrived, and that is the entire point. Now I want to get into the part of this video that most people won't hear, the insight that rewards you for staying all the way to here. And it connects directly back to what I said at the very start of this video. This is the aha moment, and I want you to really pay attention. We talked about how the market is down, oil is up, and the world is rattled, and that's all true. But here's the thing that I want you to really sit with. Every single financial crisis in modern history Every geopolitical shock, every market panic, every moment of maximum uncertainty has been followed eventually by a recovery. But the recovery never looks the same as what came before. After 2008, it wasn't the same financial system that recovered. It was a new one, built on quantitative easing and zero interest rates. And the people who understood that new system and positioned themselves correctly made generational wealth. After COVID, it wasn't the same economy that recovered. It was a new one, built on fiscal stimulus and supply chain restructuring. And again, the people who saw the shift made money. The question is not whether a recovery will come. The question is what the world looks like on the other side. So what does the new system look like on the other side of this geopolitical shock? What changes? Here's what I believe and what a growing number of serious analysts are starting to acknowledge. This conflict, whatever form it ultimately takes, accelerates a trend that was already underway. The trend of de-dollarization, the trend of countries around the world diversifying away from the US dollar as the sole reserve currency. The trend of central banks, and we have the data on this. Central banks globally bought a record amount of gold in 2022 and 2023. The trend of central banks loading up on gold as an alternative reserve asset. When you have military conflict involving the United States, and when you have global powers like China and Russia and much of the global south watching that conflict and quietly deciding that holding dollars might not be the safest strategy anymore, that is long-term structural demand for gold and silver that doesn't go away when the shooting stops. This is not a temporary spike driven by emotion. This is a fundamental reshaping of how nations and investors think about wealth, security, and currency. The aha moment here is this. Most people think about precious metals as something you buy when things are bad and sell when things get better. But the investors who have built real, lasting wealth through precious metals don't think about it that way at all. They think about precious metals as a permanent allocation, a portion of wealth that sits outside the banking system, outside the reach of any single government's monetary policy, and outside the volatility of stock markets. And every crisis like this one, every moment of maximum fear, is simply a reminder of why that allocation exists. It's not that silver and gold are great because there's a war. It's that moments of war reveal what silver and gold have always been, a form of wealth that no government can print, no bank can freeze, and no geopolitical event can inflate away. Think back to the opening of this video. The US and Israel struck Iran overnight. Markets are bleeding, oil is surging. And somewhere right now, there's a person who woke up this morning, looked at their portfolio, and felt nothing. No panic, no anxiety, no urge to call their broker, because they understood this day was possible. They prepared for it, and they are sitting on physical, precious metals that are doing exactly what they're supposed to do. That person is not lucky. That person is prepared, and preparation is a choice you can still make. So let me bring this home for you. Today is March the 2nd, 2026. Markets are opening under the shadow of military conflict between the US, Israel, and Iran. Oil has spiked nearly 10%, stock futures are down sharply, and European markets are bleeding. And in the middle of all of this, precious metals, silver and gold, are doing what they have done for thousands of years. They are serving as a store of value, a safe haven, and a hedge against the kind of uncertainty that no financial model can fully price. What I want you to take away from this video is not just information about today's news. I want you to walk away with a perspective. The perspective that geopolitical risk is not a rare black swan event. It is a permanent feature of the world we live in. And building a portfolio that assumes the world will always be stable is not a strategy. It is a gamble. Allocating a meaningful portion of your wealth to precious metals, physical silver, physical gold, or well-structured precious metals exposure is not pessimism. It is wisdom. It is the kind of financial thinking that has protected wealth across empires, across wars, across currency collapses, and across every crisis the modern world has thrown at investors. If you found value in this breakdown today, please, and I mean this genuinely, hit that like button. It costs you nothing, and it helps this channel reach more people who need this information, especially on a day like today. If you're not subscribed yet, now is the time. We cover precious metals, global markets, and wealth strategy in a way that you're not going to find on mainstream financial media. And if you want to be part of this community, subscribe and join the conversation in the comments. Because honestly, some of the best insights in this channel come from you, from the people watching from all corners of the world. I'm Yali Jiang. This is Silver Signals. Stay informed, stay prepared, and whatever you do, don't let a morning like this one catch you without a plan. I'll see you in the next one.